Looks like it is 1 o'clock, 1 minute past, so I'd like to go ahead and call our meeting to order for the May 19th meeting for the City of Erie Land Bank. And to do that, I would start off by seeking a motion to approve the consent agenda and the minutes from our April 21st meeting.
Chris, just for a procedural change, if you notice on the agenda, citizens' comments is first before the approval of the agenda as a recommendation of the order, Robert's Rules of Order as far as operational efficiency. Okay.
You changed it up on me.
Yeah.
All right.
It's just to go back to the municipal law symposium put on by Knox, that citizen comment should be held before the approval of the agenda in case there's any modifications to the agenda based upon citizens' comments.
Very good. Well, then we will start there. We will kick off the meeting with citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens who wish to speak? Come on up, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi, folks. Adam Traw with Rothmars Partnership. I'm here speaking on behalf of a party interested in one of the land bank properties, and I do have a small handout here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This parcel is a former triple lot that was combined into one. It's on 221 Locust Street, and it's actually in the backyard of the interested parties that would like to develop it. So it's a vacant lot. It had a 2 or 3 story rental structure on it that was, its original construction was nice, but it was bastardized over the years, and so it came down, and this parcel's been empty. The interested parties, Collins Builders, they're builders. They build houses. So, if they get the go-ahead, there's going to be a couple single-family houses that they'd like to put on the property. So right now it's 120 feet. They'll divide it into 2 60-foot wide properties. That fits the neighborhood. Neighborhoods are 1A, traditional family. So the R1A, of course, is the district that's for single-family residential, but the lots are small, so the setbacks and coverage and all that is more tolerant. But in our case, the proposed structures are well under any limits for the property, which I noted in the notes on the upper right-hand column. So what they'd like to do, they'd like to get rid of the hole in their neighborhood. This site right now, it's just a hole. You drive around the neighborhood. The neighborhood's really nice up there on that hill. And then you hit this open, undeveloped spot, and they'd like to just put a couple very tasteful single-family houses in that hole. And they've got a proven track record. So at this point, they're asking for consideration that they be able to acquire the property from you and get the development going. And there's Maurice Collins and Dan Collins here that if you want to say a few words about, Dan looks at that property outside his window every day. And he just thinks, geez, my family's been here forever. Let's fill the hole.
Yes, I am Dan Collins, and I live at 218 Gridley Avenue, which is directly behind the proposed lots on 221 Locust Street. I have 2 adjacent lots and a third lot which corners Elliott and Locust, which is my father's residence as well. So I've lived behind this property for 20 plus years, and as well as the property next door to me at the corner of Elliott and Gridley, and grew up on the corner of Elliott and Locust, and have stayed in the neighborhood and have remodeled three of the homes in the neighborhood there that I had lived in. And since this project, we have always kept in mind, have always looked to this property, and once it was abandoned, it had stayed abandoned and had brought down the neighborhood due to the deterioration of the property. And at that point, it took probably a decade for it to come down. So for a decade, I just sat in my backyard, figuring out what I could do, how this can conform to my neighborhood and to impact the neighborhood and bring back the value and put the parcels back on the city tax rolls. So I'm very excited. They're great plans. We've built these homes before, and I'm very excited to be living right behind this property. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have one quick question, if I could. The planned
Sure, Chris.
use for these properties, single family, what would you be doing with them once they're built? Are you holding on to them as rentals? What's the plan?
Well, the plan would be to explore that avenue. I've worked with the Redevelopment Authority over the years and have purchased property on the 400 block of West 2nd Street, for example. We went through the Redevelopment Authority through their loan process, and once those buildings were completed through draws, et cetera, we had kept ownership along with the Redevelopment Authority, and we leased those buildings out. We leased the properties out to tenants. We're a real estate brokerage company, a management company, and we managed them for a number of years, and we went to sell them, and we sold them, and the Redevelopment Authority received their funds in full, and we just moved on. So at this point, we would consider both options.
I also have a question. What is your alternate financing for this?
Conventional financing.
And you may build these to rent or to sell?
Either or at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It's worth noting, there are some other rentals in that area. I've actually looked at a couple of them, and I think their houses are nicer, but I'm biased, Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other citizens to be heard?
Good afternoon. Dr. Roche Vermaak, Executive Director of Habitat. I don't think I saw the two of you last time. Habitat has built 77 homes, 73 on the east side. There's a reason we don't build on the west side. That's not where our clients live. Our clients are on the east side of Erie. Our goal is to redevelop properties that were empty and vacant, and once LERTA expires, it becomes part of the tax base for the city and the county. In the last 5 years, $357,000 of vacant lots have become properties that have generated taxable income. Some questions that I hear that came from the team is, what are we going to do? We don't rent, we sell. So we sell the house at 0% interest over 25 years. The principal stays the exact same amount. The amount they pay is the same over 25 years. Families start to build equity from day one. They have been renters their entire life. They've never accrued generational wealth. And that is the goal of Habitat, for families who are low to moderate income to live the American dream. And 25 years later, when the house is paid off, it is theirs. After 10 years, when LERTA expires, the city receives its tax payment. We have the exact same plan as the Collinses, and that would be to split the property in two and to build 2 family homes. We don't know what the families are like at this point. We approve 5 families tonight to enter our program. They start their 300 hours of equity, where they have to show up at the build site, have to work 150 themselves. Their friends and family can do 150. And so every family has a skin in the game. They have put sweat equity into their own house. The question came up about delinquencies. I'm working with Gene. We work with a subset of the population that don't plan ahead for 25 years to own a house. And that's just the reality. And we do everything in our power. We've had one house that the city has taken back because the family divorced and moved out of state and nobody could get hold of them. And that property came back to the city. We've had 2 deed in lieux over the 36 years. And I'm working with Gene on 4 people who are significantly behind to have a plan of action. And if those become deed in lieu of foreclosure, we fix the house up at our own cost. We turn around and sell it to another Habitat family. Again, 25 years, no interest. What has Habitat done? 36 years, we have built 72. We're building 3 houses right now in the city of Erie. So it means 2 houses a year for the past 36 years. And that's 72 properties that have just been vacant and nobody would have occupied it. And we, as I said, no plan to rent it out. We sell it that families can immediately start accruing their generational wealth to pass on to their children.
Okay.
Questions? And time frame for us would be, if we were lucky enough to receive the property, we would start build in October. It would go through the winter. We would do the first house and then start to break on the foundation of the second house, and in early 2026 complete the second house. So by May, June next year, both houses would be complete.
Okay, thank you. Any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? Do we have anyone online?
I don't believe so.
Okay. If not, we will close the citizens' comments portion of our meeting, and now we will move to approve our consent agenda and the minutes from our April 21st meeting. If I could get a motion.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Thank you for that. It takes us to our finance report. April?
Thank you. In your packet, first you have the profit and loss. It was showing at the end of April a profit of about $45,000 net income. We are currently waiting on requests that we have into the Erie County Land Bank for March and April that totals about $87,000. So that should be coming hopefully after their board meeting next week. You also have the balance sheet in your packet that was showing at the end of April in our checking account a little over $91,000. And then total liabilities and equity and assets, it was the $196,581.81. Then I have the check detail and the budget versus actual. That is showing that we are at about 31% of our annual expenditure for the year.
So we're tracking right about where we should be then.
Yeah.
Overall. I don't see any
Seems
line
pretty
items
good.
that are out of line too far, so good. Any questions on the finance report? Hearing none, I'd seek a motion to approve the financials.
I move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Mr. Chair, excuse me,
Yes.
I just noticed that under the consent agenda, approving the minutes, we're approving April 21st and April 24th. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I apologize, I meant to mention that, yes, April 24th was left off the agenda, so if there could be an amended motion to approve the April 24th special meeting minutes.
I move it.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for catching that. Okay, report of the executive director. Aaron?
All right, thank you. So last week I sent out the property list, so you should have received 2 property lists, the properties held in inventory and then the sold property list. And then later last week I sent out the operational summary over the last, basically the 6.5 years of the authority. So I'm just going to kind of walk through some highlights of the properties held in inventory currently, the sold properties and then kind of highlight some of the operational summary part of it. So right now, held in inventory, we have 102 properties total. 21 of those are 2024 judicial tax sales. 8 of those properties will be transferred over to the redevelopment authority as part of the conduit sales agreement to acquire those properties. 43 of those properties of the 102 currently have structures on them. 14 are under demo contracts, and several others associated with the judicial tax sale are out for demo bid currently. So there is some more that will be going out for proposals in the near future, but we're working on demolishing those that aren't salvageable. As far as the sold properties, total on that list is 89 properties. We conveyed 28 properties with structures on them. 7 structures were demolished by the new property owners for whatever reason. And total revenue in from property sales was $179,012.45 over those 89 properties. I didn't pull together, we're working on gathering and putting all that data in one place of what our costs on those properties were, but I don't have that at the current time. Okay. But moving over to is there any questions with the property list before I kind of go through the operational summary?
I just had one question on your summary for the last 6 years, where you sold 21 properties for independent rehab. I wonder how many of those were vacant lots as opposed to buildings with structures, lots with structures on them?
None of those were vacant lots. None
Okay.
of the 21 were, we under the first 6.5 years of the land bank, we have not conveyed a vacant parcel for new development. That is something that we have not entered into a development agreement on.
Until we had this Vermont property last month, right?
Yes,
that'll
is
be
the
our first one.
That'll be
Okay.
the first one once that closes, so. And the hope would be Locust would be the next
Yes.
one. And then moving forward, and some of the procedural changes is that we won't enter into a vacant lot proposal that isn't adjacent to another parcel without a development proposal, just so that we can try to clear some of that up moving forward. We're not conveying parcels for land holding, which is part of our policies and procedures. But as part of that, like I said, 191 properties we have acquired through the land bank in 6.5 years. 77 of those properties were acquired through the judicial tax sale, with the remaining properties acquired through the redevelopment authority's condemnation process and blighted property process. 125 properties were demolished. $1.1 million in demolition costs were incurred by the land bank. 68 vacant lots were sold. As Sumner said, 21 properties were sold under development agreements. To date, the Erie Land Bank has invested a little over $3.4 million into the city of Erie through its mitigation efforts. That includes $775,000 in funding through Erie County's Act 152 demolition program, which has been instrumental in helping offset some of our operational costs and allow us to demolish properties that otherwise would have eaten into our operating budget and minimize the amount of properties that we could take. So, and then I kind of provided an overview of each work plan and the funding that we have utilized off of those over the first 6.5 years. So.
I just want to say thank you for putting the summary together, because we've covered a lot of ground, and it helps to put it all in one place where we can see what we've covered in the last 6 years. And it really also shows the intentional pivot we're trying to make from just taking down the worst of the worst with blight to trying to get into more actively rehabbing and hopefully some new constructions. And that's why we rolled out that financing flexibility too. So first few years we did what we had to do and take out the worst of the worst, and now it's a little bit different balance, hopefully, moving forward. So thank you for that summary, Aaron.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's my report.
Okay, great. Any questions for Executive Director? Hearing none, we will move right into the Solicitor's report.
Good afternoon, Board. Happy to be here. With the marching orders from Aaron and his team, you'll see the sale of parcels and their status to add to those numbers that Aaron just provided us with a 6.5-year status update. My goal is to provide a more detailed breakdown of these properties for the board so that you're looking at a little bit more of a more definitive time frame. But for this report, I wanted to get you all the properties and give you an idea as to where they stand, but look for a little bit more detail going forward, starting with next month. Again, I understand the goal of this board is to get properties back on the city tax rolls, and I'm happy to be a part of that, and quite frankly, I'm proud of what we're doing for our city. The next item, 723 East 22nd Street, with the prior issue on another property, meeting with Aaron and Kyle, I thought that it is prudent to provide the board with a more definitive outline and procedure as to where we stand when we run into those situations where we've acquired property and there is a holdover or someone who we weren't aware was in the property, and the steps that we're taking to make sure that that not only their interests are protected and safeguarded and that opportunities are provided for them to relocate, but also to protect our process in that procedure as well. So what I will continue to do is to provide the board through Aaron and Kyle's help and guidance to let you know what we're doing and how we're doing it so that everybody has a high level of comfort going forward. So that was the intention. That was the intention of that entry. And again, we'll be elaborating on that as we go forward so that, again, everybody has a comfort level. The quiet title actions, these have all been, for the most part, very successful. And quite frankly, probably 4 of the 5 are going to be coming off. The only one that we're circling back on further confirmation of service would be the number 2, which is 1316 Buffalo Road. But the rest of these are successful in that we will have a final order making sure that title is clear so that, again, these properties can now transfer from the Erie Land Bank out and be available for the market. As always, it's important to be able to provide the board with our success stories, and these will be taken off as well, but there are 2 projects that we have been able to successfully provide a certificate of completion and remove any and all, not necessarily liens or encumbrances, but notations within the title so that free and clear title is again obtained to the property owners based upon their completion of the rehabilitation project. And I also think that it's important, and I've said it before, it's important for us and especially the board to know the system in place works. If you fight it, it makes it more difficult for everybody. But these are, again, 2 new projects where the owners and the developers were working with Aaron and his crew for a success. So that, again, it's important that I feel for all of us to understand that the procedures and process work. And I'm happy to be a part of that. With that, if you have any questions, I'm open for any questions or concerns.
Of the 21 properties that have been under development agreements, have any of those fallen back to the land bank? Were all of them completed? I know that...
No, one we acquired through the judicial tax sale in December. It was sold in 2020 under a development.
But 20 out of 21 haven't come back?
They haven't come back. There's several that are still under development. They've taken a lot longer than were originally anticipated, and a lot of that is the reason behind the amendments to the policies and procedures to allow us few enforcement mechanisms on the land bank side, but they're still,
But
they're
that's
still
a
there.
good,
and
that's a
they're
good
working on it.
record.
So,
I mean, all of these rehabs are uncertain as to what people are going to run into, and you've had a good result with it so far.
so far,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's encouraging. Sumner, it's a great point. It's encouraging. So they now know that there's some teeth and there's activity and there's people watching to hold them to task. So we're getting great results.
Very good. Any other questions for our solicitor? Thank you, Gene.
Thank you.
Okay, Aaron, let's go ahead and move on to unfinished business and new business.
All right. so
Knock
you-
out the first one.
All right, so the first is a Habitat for Humanity request. It was on the agenda last month, kind of brought it to the board's attention to give you some time to think about it. So Habitat is seeking some assistance and support for demolition of a property they own at 2414 Linwood Avenue. It's a property they acquired in 2018. The house has been in disrepair and vacant since that time, and Habitat needs some assistance with demolition so that then they can prepare that property for development of another structure. It is a slab-on-grade construction in poor condition. It would be my estimate that the demolition and clearing of that structure wouldn't exceed probably $5,000, maybe $6,000 at most. My best guess would be $5,000 given its size and stature. But you know, in the past, I've brought in properties in front of the board for assistance from neighborhood groups and such as far as demolition, and feel that Habitat being, you know, the work that they do and their work for the community, that the land bank could assist. We do have in our budget for this year $25,000 that was put there as kind of a contingency in demolition for any additional things that we would need to demolish through the year. So.
Was that lot purchased from the Erie Land Bank?
No, I believe it was a private purchase. I'm not quite sure.
And do we know how many lots that Habitat for Humanity own in
That
the
I do
city?
not.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how many they have available right now.
It looks like we haven't touched that demo line item yet.
No, we have not. There's nothing, yeah, that funding's just sitting there, and, yeah, we haven't quite found something else for it. That was the 25,000, you know, to pilot an accessory structure demolition program that
I mean,
that
these
we're
are-
still seeking other funds for.
Are they
but
willing to link that with commencing construction? I mean, they've owned that for 6 years.
We can structure however the board would feel to put a motion together. We can cap it at a certain amount, that we give a little assistance, but not all of it. We can, however the board would want to motion the
And
support.
what was that address again?
2414 Linwood Avenue. It is on the east side of McClelland, behind the elementary school.
Do you give an indication of his timeline to build?
No, I do not. It is a very large parcel. I'm not sure if it's very deep, kind of in a mix of development. You guys should have a aerial of it in there. The property actually sits closer to Fairmont Parkway than it does Linwood, but it's a very deep parcel.
So I'll just throw it out there. I would be willing to assist, but on a reimbursement basis when a certificate of occupancy is issued. I don't know if that's throwing it out too far in advance, but
That we would refund that to them
Refund
when they
it,
put a
yeah.
building up?
yeah,
I like that idea.
up to a certain dollar amount. You think it would probably not exceed 6,000 or 7,000?
Yeah, I would say if it came in more than 5, I would be surprised.
Yeah, I like putting a condition on it,
Yeah.
because I'm curious how many lots they have. I mean, they're in here bidding on 2, and this one has been sitting for, looks to be a nice lot there for a considerable period of time.
So I would say assistance of up to $5,000 to be on a reimbursement basis upon issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
You good? Any questions? Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
I would like to pause here, and I think I want to change the order of things. I want to finish up the unfinished business on Locust before we get into the other topics. And before we do that, if it is okay with our Realtor, catching you off guard and perhaps unprepared, but if you don't mind stepping to the microphone, giving us any updates you have before we recess into discussion.
Updates on any particular parts or 221?
Any contracts outstanding on, or folks
Okay.
you're working with on
Yeah,
this?
let's see here. I know that 320 Plum Street has 2 offers on it. One of them's being looked at very closely. Another just came in this morning, so it's fresh. There's been a good deal of activity on it. I want to also state that one of my agents, John Easter, is actually working on that listing, so I'm sharing with you my knowledge of it, but I'm not directly working on it. 221 Locust, of course, is very popular. We have things to go over with that. What else is out there currently? Cameron is forthcoming. I think Wednesday is a planned event at the house. So John is preparing for that. We're pretty much ready to go on that. It's exciting. I think that's it for inventory right now, though. East Avenue, 2712 East Avenue has been agreed to and moving forward. So we're shepherding these things along in the settlement process, making sure they're moving along. We don't want you guys cutting grass any longer than you have to be. So I think that's everything in inventory right now. I know there's some other things forthcoming, so we'll see. But that's...
Okay.
I have
And then 17th, I'm sorry, one more just dawned on me. 1737 West 6th Street, that has been fully executed. It is also moving towards settlement. I don't know exactly when that will occur, but everything is in place and
We
advancing.
actually have a sales agreement and it's signed.
We have a sales agreement in place on that and earnest money being held. Yeah, I know that there is some of this is being structured as we go. We're formatting, and it's coming along nicely, though, so, yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate all your efforts that you've brought to the board here. It's good to see these properties moving.
I'd like
I
to add
have
more
one
thing.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the, what is your suggested price for the 2321 Cameron? Because that's nearly complete or is complete.
You want,
I can speak.
Yeah.
John had conducted the CMA on that, and if I recall, the recommended list price was $174.9 to $179.9.
yeah, I think his recommendation was to list it at 179.9.
And where
Okay.
would that put us relative to our investment in it?
I'm finalizing those numbers, and I hope
Okay.
that to the board tomorrow.
But that sounds like a pretty healthy number. I mean, I'm more concerned about the halo effect on the whole neighborhood there. So the higher the better, the same as what we're hoping to see at 6th and Vermont, where it's going to encourage investment in the city, and we've got that opportunity up there in Cameron, and 175 sounds like,
Yeah.
you're not erring on the low side.
I think it's competitively priced at that. It's not necessarily speculatively priced. There's a little bit of speculation in all pricing, but it's a justified price. A lot of work's been done there. Comparables support that. So
Yeah.
I would like to editorialize for a moment here, though, on something that was mentioned before. Your guys' decision to screen prospective buyers for these lots, for these properties, although it is a little prohibitive, some people, we get these calls now on the properties that we have. Well, why do we need these? And it's a very, very easy case to make that we want capable people seeing these through, that we don't want to just hand these off to somebody who doesn't have the financial means or is unaware of what it takes to get them renovated. So I applaud the board for the decision that you've made to structure it that way. It's going to serve you well in the future, and it's easier to have that conversation on the front end. The proposals that come together are done in full disclosure of expectations it's a good policy, and I just want to let you know that, so.
Thank you. Thank you for the updates. At this point, then, if we don't have any other questions, I think it would be good for us to pause, go into executive session, and review the multiple bids we have. Well, we're going to change up the order.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to, because we need to make a final decision on these bids. So at this point, I'd like to pause and go into council chambers, if that's okay. back into the agenda where we left off. I appreciate everybody's patience with this. It's a good problem to have. We have multiple bids on a property, and we just want to make sure that we're being as fair as possible. I also appreciate the legal guidance, making sure we're doing this properly. We've had a lot of interest on this site, and I want everybody to understand who has shown interest. First of all, again, I thank them for their patience. We are looking at this as a body. We are looking at this through the lens of maximizing development in the city, period. That's what we're trying to do. And so if we think that we can perhaps get an extra house or two built by structuring things differently, that's sort of the obligation we have. And so out of our conversations, what I would like to seek is a motion to subdivide the lot at 221 Locust Street into two 60-foot lots, and to publicly relist that, and to also encourage those who've put a bid in to come back to us with a firm timeline, firm commitment, but to publicly reopen that property up for contract
As two individual lots.
as two individual 60-foot lots.
I'll move it.
And I'll be pleased to second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries. And I definitely, again, I look forward to working with those who've already put in a proposal. If they want to tweak that proposal, come back to us. First of all, if it's acceptable to them, come back to us with a firm timeline. If it's not, we also need to publicly list it this way and give other folks an opportunity if they want to step forward. So hopefully we're able to get more than one home built there. And thank you for your patience on this. So at this point, I'd like to jump back into our regular agenda, and I think we need to discuss our website update, right, Aaron?
Yes, so as I discussed last month, I wanted to make some changes to the Land Bank's website, reached out to WorkBot, who hosts our website and who initially did the design and implementation of the website back in 2017. And going through that, there's a lot more that kind of needs to be done to make it work efficiently and also to bring it up. I mean, 2017 to 2025, that's a wide range when it comes to, technology and websites. So there's some new advances and things. So WorkBot put together a proposal to really go through the entire website and bring it up to this day and age. And so in front of the board is a proposal for WorkBot to revise the website at $8,550 and then basically work through that process. So that's there for the board's consideration. Did they not, I didn't have you make it for everybody, did I?
I'll just say I've worked with them in the past and have had good experience with them, so.
Yes, they've been, we between the authority and the land bank, we work with two website companies, and the land bank website is, they're far easier to work with, and their CM side of it is far easier to work on, so.
You sometimes get inquiries from the website?
We do get quite a few contact us requisitions on the website that we follow up with. We average about 2 to 3 a week, I would say.
Now, do you have the lots listed with any aerials like you have?
That is one of the changes that I had asked if they could do, and they're certainly open to it. It's just something that in the current setup they can't do. So that's something that we would be looking to do is have an easier way for us to manage our constantly flexing, inventory of properties. That way we can easily put things up and take them on and put them off the website.
Yeah, and at the moment, you just have the addresses and the index number and the lot dimensions
Yeah.
but you don't have any.
No aerial
Maps
shots,
or-
no maps, no
Yeah.
picture. Yeah,
And-
it's just kind of
and
an
this
inventory list.
This revision would allow you to include maps or
Yeah.
aerials?
Yeah, because right now it's
I
linked
think
to a
that'd be a
Google
big
map that
plus.
doesn't work very well.
Okay.
It has some bugs in it, and it's something that they said they can work through, and they can change and revise it, but in the current setup, it's not able to be changed.
And Mr. Snipper, we saw a proposal maybe a month or two ago. Is this different than what was presented a couple months ago? or-
No, that's the same one that was presented last month.
Okay, we just didn't take action
Yeah,
on
it
it.
was just for the board's consideration and something to think about, so.
Okay.
I'll say, you know, as we get aggressive about trying to market these properties, and really it all starts with your website, right? I mean, that's your forward face, and it's got to be functional, it's got to be user-friendly, and so I support the investment of getting this upgraded.
Yeah, I'll move we approve it.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 2321 Cameron, we have a couple of change orders.
Yeah, so in front of you is two change orders. One is to finalize the work of Braun Construction, who did the major renovations over there. A couple things, you know, we were kind of holding on to, just waiting on some things to come in, and an issue we had with the sewer line that we were unaware of. So we had the change order 2 for Braun Construction is to replace the base cabinets upon further looking when it came. We were replacing the upper cabinets, and we were going to paint the base cabinets. And just for continuity and appearance sake, for $520, we replaced the base cabinets. It just seemed like the best thing to do. And then with the second part of that, $2,400 of that change order is plumber to rework the gas line to connect to the new national fuel meter outside. Along with the major part of that was a backed up drain, which caused 2 inches of water into the basement early on in the project, that we had to jet the sewer line to clean that out. A lot of that was inactivity of the property for so long. So that's a total change order 2 for $2,950.95 for Braun under one motion. And then the other motion is under the driveway. We had a contract with Empire for $59.75 for the driveway. The city required 2 additional sidewalk slabs to be replaced to meet code at an additional $250.
While we discuss extras for that property, am I correct in recalling we don't have central air in that property?
We do not have central air in that property.
Did you get a price for that, or?
We did not. We did not.
I'm just thinking, you know, we're trying to upgrade the neighborhood, and
Yeah, and I mean, I can give you my
think-
2 cents on central air in Erie, Pennsylvania, but I mean, that's my personal opinion, so the mechanics and engineering of central air in northern climates does not work, so you can't push heavy cold air up to from the basement up to the first floor, so.
oh, it wouldn't work with the ductwork for that?
No, AC is more efficient from top down, where in our northern climate, heating is efficient from bottom up. So when you add AC to a northern home that isn't designed, you're pushing cold, heavy air, and you're trying to push it up to the top level, and it ends up always settling down. So your basement, which is essentially in Cameron Road, half underground, would be substantially colder than the thermostat upstairs, where the reading is being taken. So
But we could put some mini splits in the upper level to,
we could, or we could leave that up to the new homeowner who
Yeah.
buys it at market rate and, you know, moves in, so.
okay.
Can you give us a quick idea with these 2 change orders? I mean, we're still pretty close to our original budget.
And I'm finalizing some of the final numbers based with the installation of the appliances, some of the landscaping costs, and some of the final tweaking things that we've purchased, accessories for the bathrooms, closet shelving, things like that. But our contingency on this project was around $16,000, I believe. So we're well below that. The driveway came in at about half of what we had anticipated. So we're well under budget as far as that goes. And like I said, I'm hoping to have that to the board tomorrow. I was hoping to have it today, but some other things hit priority this morning, so.
Okay. All right, then, if there...
And just going ahead to when we're trying to market that property, I'm thinking we should approach some of the local lenders about providing financing on that, you know, at a good rate. I would think they'd want to be associated with reinvestment in the city of Erie.
Well, we kind of have the agreement with Erie Bank in their first front door program that they
Right.
have, so,
I'm
It
not
extends to
familiar.
all banks, yeah, but,
yeah.
yeah.
What is that for? Well, that would be for a first-time buyer. They have some kind of a discount. I'm not familiar with that.
They have some programs that they kind of, work with home buyers on, but we also work with Marquette's our bank, so we can reach out to them as well.
I just think, one or more of the local lenders would want to be seen as a partner with what we're trying to do here. We're trying to do the same thing with a school district. We get a lot of support from United Way. You go to Cathedral Prep, you can, they're a nice athletic facility. They have all kinds of banners up from sponsors. They have to do it from necessity, but we also in the city are getting a lot of support, and I'm trying to get banners put up at our facilities to show our children that, Erie Insurance, the hospitals, everybody is pushing for the public schools as well. And, for this to be public-private, that aspect of it, I'd like to push. So I'd like to have some lender associated with that, because if they say, if the going rate's 6 and they say, okay, we'll write that at 5, we might be able to get a bigger price for it. Doesn't make that much difference to the land bank, but you have a neighborhood up there with a couple hundred homes, and everybody's going to point to that and say, gee, that sold for X. So that halo effect, it would enhance the halo effect if we had a lender that would help with a little bit better rate so we could get a little bit better price.
Yeah, I can reach out to a couple of them. and see
Yeah,
what we
maybe
can work
extend
on.
the invitation to the open house to
Yeah.
our local bank presidents. Any other questions or comments on the change orders? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve.
I move we approve.
All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Takes us to our last item, 320 Plum Street, developer proposals. And
Yeah, I would just kind of ask the board to suspend this
Yeah.
agenda item to allow some additional time. The one proposal just came in right before the meeting, so I haven't even had a chance to review it. And the other proposal I'm working through with code enforcement and under registration to clear up a couple things that we've found through our due diligence period. So I just ask to suspend that motion item at the current time.
Okay. Any other business?
The only thing I have is to remind everybody about Wednesday. I hope everybody can make it. I think Mr. Scalise is unavailable, unfortunately, but hopefully everybody else is, and everybody else we've invited. Cynthia has done a tremendous job trying to get everything organized and prepared, and I think the house is well on its way to put on a good show for us on Wednesday. So
Terrific.
That's Wednesday at noon?
Wednesday at noon.
I can make it.
Oh, all right, awesome.
It's on my dance card, yeah.
Okay, and
Since
so...
it has a party, I'm coming.
So in closing, again, I just want to stress, first of all, I want to thank those who put bids in on properties. I want to thank them for their patience. It's a public process, so it takes a little bit longer, but we have to make sure that we're transparent and fair to all bidders, and also while we're trying to maximize development in the city. So we will get there. It's a nice problem to have multiple bids on one property, but please be patient with us as we work through this, and next month we will see some progress on that as we subdivide it and then look for that input. So with that, any other comments from the panel?
Just one more thought on our idea of splitting it, because we just discussed that at length for the first time this afternoon. It may be possible that some of these people are going to submit bids on both properties again, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we'll
Could
we'll
be.
just have to parse through that next month. Yeah.
Could be. Okay. Hearing no other comments, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.